today we've got Sarah with us. And Sarah, tell us a little bit about you, how you got into photography, and kind of where you are now.
Sure. So, like I said, I'm based in South Florida, Southwest Florida to be specific. I focus, well, that's I guess not the same as it used to be. My focus used to be with families and maternity. Over the last year, I've shifted my focus towards couples, building a new business there. I just felt that call more towards couples, and it just fits a little bit better with my lifestyle and what I want for my life and life balance. So that is kind of where my focus is right now. This is my third year in business, so I'm still actually pretty early on, but I don't really feel like it at this point. I feel like I've been doing this forever. I actually started out in marketing, so I worked for 3 years at an advertising agency straight out of college. And then after that, when I moved to Florida, I moved into the corporate world and worked with social media and influencers for a couple years. And then during that time, I was building my photography business. And so a year after I launched it, I put in my 2-week notice and went full time with this business, and the rest is history. So now I run that family maternity business, and I just launched this separate couples, weddings, and elopement business. And then I also teach and host workshops and release online courses, which is really where my heart super is. So super divided as far as my passions go. I guess multi-passionate. I can't help it. That's why I love this business and why I love this industry. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's great. And that's amazing that you have been doing this for 3 years and are already in the point in your business where you feel like you can educate people and, host. I know you host retreats and workshops and all of that. So that is amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about difficult clients, which I know I see that questions pop up all the time in Facebook groups about like, how do I respond to this client? I have this request. What do I do? So before we dive into kind of how to handle those requests, what type of requests have you seen from your clients that are kind of outside of your normal editing scope?
Yeah, so being based in South Florida, I work with a lot of people who are coming here on vacation, but also coming here because they have grandparents or parents who live here and have second homes here. And so a lot of times they also book me for those group sessions, those extended family sessions, which you would never know if you look at my social media because I never post those. My heart is more so with storytelling photography when it comes to families. But also, I'm running a business here and I get a lot of business from those extended family sessions. So, currently, I still take those on. I'm looking at how I can adjust that in the future, whether that's having someone else go shoot those and outsourcing editing. But for the time being, I'm still shooting those. But I get a lot of requests with those sessions for face swaps and things with those perfect everyone looking at the camera shots where someone wasn't paying attention or someone's eyes were over here because they were supposed to be looking at me, but they were distracted. A lot of times, just face swaps when it comes to those group shots. I don't typically get a lot of other stuff. Sometimes I get bra straps, suntan swim line, or swimsuit suntan lines, because a lot of people are on vacation, they come here, they get burnt, and then they do their session with me and they've got these tan lines in their photos. So sometimes things like that. That is typically what I see with my clientele.
Mhm. Yeah, and that it can be tricky because when you go into those sessions, they do want that perfect photo, but a lot of people I feel like they want every single photo to be that perfect where everyone's looking at the camera. So, is there anything that you tell your clients beforehand or like prep them in a way that helps them understand that, there are going to be some candid shots and some pose shots, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, as a storytelling lifestyle photographer, I don't do a lot of shots with my clients looking at the camera unless it's an extended family shoot. It's almost like it's two separate shoots. And I've even in my head tried to figure out, can I brand these separately? Can I call one of these a intimate storytelling session and one of these a extended family lifestyle session? So it's very clear that I'm shooting differently. I recently did create a separate page on my website where I'm saying this is different. I shoot these different. I prepare for these sessions differently. And I realized that that was something I needed to do because I was getting to the editing and I was getting these requests for these edits for swapping these faces to get these perfect shots. And it just didn't feel right because that's not the kind of photographer I am, right? I'm like, I don't do these things. You look on my website, you look on my social media, I don't do these perfect looking at the camera shots. I mean, every now and then I will, but for the most part, that's just not my style. So I realized that I needed to communicate a little bit better with my extended family sessions on what to expect. And that, yes, I will still do these sessions. Yes, I will still take the photos with everybody looking at the camera. But this is overall not my style. I want to do those couples of shots, get those combinations, and then we're moving to a more lifestyle storytelling in the moment type of shooting. So I'm breaking you up into smaller groups, and I'm not having you look at me anymore. We're focusing on you guys, what you see in my work or what you see on my website. That is going to be the second portion of the session. So I do outline those kind of expectations up front of like, here's how we're going to run the session. We're still going to get these shots with you looking at the camera, but then we're going to focus on a more lifestyle storytelling type of shooting and posing.
Definitely. Communication is key in those kind of situations. And I know we talked a little bit before we hopped on about how social media has played a role in client requests. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what we were discussing earlier?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, and this is not just in the photography industry, people will share things on social media because they know it will get good exposure. It's going to perform well, but they don't necessarily think about the repercussions of that. And I think, over the last year or so, especially with Reels that are more video focused, people have created a lot of content that shows that back end editing, which is great. It's really important to show that stuff. But I think a lot of people have maybe focused on some of the things that we shouldn't necessarily just promote. Like, yes, we should talk about how it's possible to make certain edits, but I think that I see a lot of content come across my feed where people are showing themselves cleaning an image. And yes, from one standpoint, I think that's great. It's teaching clients that, hey, it takes a while to edit these photos because I'm doing all of these things. But on the other hand, it's also showing them what's possible and giving them this idea that anything is possible with editing, and that's not totally the case. And also, it's providing unrealistic expectations as far as timelines because most of those videos are sped up. I have yet to see a video like that truly says, here's how long it actually took me to clean up this image. Here's how long it actually took me to Photoshop these people out of the background. We're just showing a super sped up time lapse where clients are like, wow, that's so cool. They can do that. That's not their first thought that, wow, that took a long time, but that's awesome that they can do that. Right. And so I think that we as a whole in this industry need to maybe shift the way that we talk about these things. Yes, we should talk about this stuff. It's great content, but we also have to say, hey, like, it took a long time to do this. It's not the snap of the fingers. AI is great, but it's, there's still a lot of manual work that gets done here because what has happened now is everybody just thinks that anything is possible. And I think we've all heard clients say a bazillion times, oh, she'll just Photoshop that out. And it's like the most cringiest thing to hear because we're like, oh, yes, just give me more work. Please give me more work. Like that's what we're saying, right? So I think that has contributed a lot to the requests that we get today. I wasn't in the industry 10 years ago, but I would be really shocked if people requested this kind of stuff as much as they do now. Because I think it's just so much more common knowledge now what's possible with these platforms, which again, like I said, is not a bad thing, but I do think we have to, as an industry, be a better job educating clients on why, it's everything is not what it seems, and it takes a lot more time and it is manual work. It's not like I'm clicking a button necessarily. I am literally having to, sometimes rework an image to make it perfect in their eyes.
Yes. Yeah. And someone said, make me look skinny. Comments from clients. If you have comments from clients that you want to share of like what you've experienced, post them in the comments because I'm really interested to see what you guys are seeing compared to what Sarah's seeing, what I'm seeing. Almost every single session, I have clients say, you can Photoshop that out, right? That's easy. Like between social media and AI, it has put so many unrealistic expectations on photographers with what we actually can do and what we're getting paid for. When you take 4 hours to edit not 4 hours, but when you spend an hour or so to edit an image that your client has requested so many changes on or whatever, going back and forth, that just lowers what you're getting paid. Like, you're not getting paid that much per hour anymore. Like, it kills me when people get these requests and they say yes to everything. So that's why we're discussing this today. We want to make sure that you guys know your worth and you know how to respond to clients when these tricky situations come up. So part of that, I know, is with setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is crucial in the photography industry. So what advice do you have for photographers who struggle with setting boundaries for clients, especially when faced with those unreasonable, demands from clients?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, we all feel this to a degree. Like, we all have a little bit of a people pleaser inside of us. I think some of us have more than others. And I think it's important to ask yourself, why do you feel that need to people please? Are you just trying to seek someone's approval, or maybe are you afraid of what's going to happen if you don't? Figure out where that is coming from, where that people pleasing tendency is coming from. And if you know that, then at least you can respond a little bit better, and just knowing yourself and why you're feeling a certain way is going to help you figure out game plan for how to respond in situations like this. So first and foremost, I would ask yourself that, are you seeking approval, or are you just afraid of the repercussions if you don't say yes to this person? But I think first and foremost, my number one piece of advice is that you have got to have a good contract. If you don't have one, send me a message after this. I will get you set up. I am so passionate about this topic. My husband's an attorney, and so I don't do anything without a contract. And so I think that when people first get started, they don't know how to respond to questions like this, and they haven't set up a guide or a parameters for how they're going to respond in these situations. So if you don't have a contract and someone says, oh, can you also do this, this, and this in an image? You're kind of at the mercy of their request, because it's your job as a business owner to outline, here's what's included and here's not. And if you didn't do that, then you can't be upset when they ask for something like that. So you've got to have a good contract that says, here's what's included in this session. Here's what happens if you ask for a reschedule. Here's what happens if I have to cancel, which, that's not necessarily expectations on clients. But if you want additional edits on an image, here's how much it's going to cost. If you don't have those things lined up, if you don't give them that before they even book the session, they need to see that in the contract, or at least have been given the opportunity to see it in the contract to know that, hey, they agreed to those terms. So they can't be upset with you now that you're telling them, hey, if you want this done in the image, I can do it. Absolutely. But it is additional time. It's outside of my scope of editing. It's going to cost this. So I think number one, get a contract. You've got to have a good one that protects you in all of these situations, so you have something to fall back on. Number two, I would just say to be careful what you say yes to, because a lot of times when you give someone an inch, they take a mile. I have seen when you do something for someone and you don't charge, you don't, throw up any barriers, it's those people that then come back and say, oh, well, could you also do this? Oh, and actually on this image, I didn't love this. And you just you're opening up that door. So I think you have to be careful what you say yes to, because you just have to know, if I say yes to this, they are now going to know that I will waiver on my terms. You know what I mean? Especially with a rescheduling thing, if you say yes to a client rescheduling, know in the back of your head that they're always going to think it's an option to reschedule with you when they book you in the future, because now you've shown them that you'll do it. And as far as they know, it doesn't bother you. It's no big deal. So remember that you're when you give someone an inch, they might want to take a mile. And then also know that they may not. It just depends on the client. And you've got to look at everything case by case. Every situation is different. Every client is different. If this is a client that you have not enjoyed working with and you do not want to work with again, then who cares? Tell them exactly what your contract says and let it be done. If this is someone that has worked with you 15 times in the last few years, you love working with them, they have been so good to you and to your business, then maybe this is a situation where you waiver a little bit on those terms that are outlined in your contract, because you are still a business. a person, and you're the business owner, you get to make these decisions. But I think just knowing that every situation is different and every client is different is really important, to look at everything case by case to be able to make a really wise, educated decision that you're going to feel good about. And then lastly, I just think that we got to educate, like we were just talking about. We have to educate them up front. We have to educate them throughout the whole process, what to expect. I think that just leads to a much better experience for everyone overall when those expectations are clearly outlined and there's no surprises. I think that's just really important. I guess actually one more I would say would be, always respond with grace. It doesn't matter if their request is totally ridiculous or very reasonable. You do have to remember that you are representing your business right here, and you want this to end well no matter what, because you do have something to lose here. They've got nothing to lose. You have your business's reputation on the line. And if you respond really hastily, or you're just really offended by this request, and maybe your response is just a little too intense, and then they go write a bad review for your business, that's permanent. It's like, would you rather have a bad review or just like work through this with them, being really polite and professional? Like, I think all of us would rather just work through it. So respond with grace. If you need to take a day to think about how to respond to somebody's request, don't feel like you have to respond to them. I mean, they're asking you for something. So the ball is in your court here. So take your time to figure out what you want to say, and always make sure. And I don't agree with the whole client is always right, customer is always right. I don't agree with that. That's not true. But I do think that the customer has nothing to lose and you do. So you have to treat it as if they're not, you know what I mean? You have to treat it like they're right, even if they're not, with your words and how you respond to it.
Yeah, and it is so important to respond with grace. I cannot tell you the amount of posts that I've seen in, random photography groups on Facebook where they're like, well, this is how, they screenshot the conversation and ask for advice on how to respond to the client after they've already been talking to them. And so many times I see people responding just in where you can tell that they picked up their phone or went to their computer and typed out a response immediately, instead of just taking a second to step back and say, okay, how would I like, what response would I like to hear as the customer or whatnot? Just take a breath. Because I feel like, for us, there is a lot on the line. Our business is on the line. If someone writes a bad review, it hurts. So taking that time to just step back and think about it is so important. And then I also want to go back to contracts really quick, because that is like the root of everything. I love how you said, like, you have everything, all of those different things in your contract. If you are not sending contracts, you need to stop what you're doing and go get that set up first. CloudSpot Studio makes that very easy. You can send your clients an entire project where everything's in one place with the contract, the questionnaire, invoices, everything. So if you're not doing that, make sure that you start doing that before you do anything else after this live.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so clients asking for discounts, or we've talked about kind of, asking, for face swaps and that kind of stuff, but let's move on to discounts now. So I know that that's common, and it is really hard to respond in a way where you're like, I'm sorry, but no. And I feel like it's just this, it's awkward. So how do you handle discount requests?
Yeah. Well, I'll be upfront. This doesn't happen to me a lot. I've done a really good job of building my brand and getting to a type of client who doesn't ask for discounts too much. I think this is something that happens when you're working with clients who are on a budget. Those are the ones who typically are honestly more difficult to work with as well, because to them, this is so much money. And so that's why they expect perfection. Whereas someone who has lots and lots of money, disposable income, this is not much for them. And so it doesn't bother them necessarily to drop this money on a photo shoot or whatever. So they're typically they're not putting as much pressure on the experience. So I don't get this request a lot now. When I first started and my prices were a lot lower, I did get this request here and there. But the way that I approach these things is always, first of all, less is more. You do not owe them a long excuse. or not excuse, but a long reason for why you don't want to give them or can't give them a discount. You don't owe them that. And when you do give them a really long response, you're opening up all these doors for them to respond back to you and try to still keep working on you to try to get you to give them that discount. So my go-to response is, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I really wish I could." Like, truly, I wish I could shoot for everybody for free. I really do. That would be amazing. But I have bills to pay and a family to support, you know? So I really would like to be able to make money on my sessions. So I tell people, as much as I would love to do this, like, it wouldn't be fair to my other clients who are paying full price. That takes you out of the equation. It's no longer a matter of, "Oh, I want to, but I can't because, if I did and then somebody else found out about it, then then they would be upset that they didn't get a discount." Because when you say something like that, then you're opening that door for them to respond and say, "Oh, we promise we won't tell anyone." You know what I mean? And then you're having to go back and you're having this conversation. Whereas if you just keep it short, it wouldn't be fair to my other clients. They can't argue with that. It's not fair to your other clients. If I hired someone and then I found out somebody else paid significantly less for exactly what I paid for, I would be mad. So, when you take the pressure off of yourself and you give them that response, they literally cannot say anything back, and you're not giving them an opportunity to respond back and say, "Oh, well, we won't tell anyone," or, "Oh, you don't have to rush and get them back to us. You can take your time if you're too busy." So that's how I respond in those situations. But I think, again, if you're getting a lot of requests like that, I would encourage you to invest some money into working to build the value of like your business and what you're offering clients so that you can get to a higher end client that is not going to request those discounts as often.
Definitely. I feel like when you're in that like $150 to $300 range for sessions, those requests definitely come up a little bit more. Once you get out of there and get to a higher price point, you do find clients that truly value your work, which it feels good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We did have a question, which I'm trying to pull it back up. It's not letting me go back and look at old comments. So I think someone was saying that um, yeah, and the chat is not showing up in Restream either. So I can see like the last 5 comments, but someone was asking, what would you put in your contract to basically, they had someone saying that they wanted a color photo of a black and white photo that was delivered. And it was intentionally made black and white because of, the stylistic choices and whatnot. So how do you respond to a client that asks for that? And then should there be something in the contract that helps them in the future say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but you can refer to this part of my contract," or whatnot?
I mean, yeah, definitely put it in the contract. I would put that under like your my contract has a section about like artistic standard or style or whatever. That's an artistic choice. Typically, for me anyways, if I'm only giving someone an image in black and white, it's because the lighting wasn't fantastic, but I loved the image. And so that is what I'll tell people. I'll say, "Oh, so actually there's a reason I didn't give you this in color. The lighting here was not great, but I just absolutely loved this moment. So I wanted to give you this image anyways. And I just put it in black and white because in color, it didn't really meet my standards because again, the lighting in this moment wasn't great because we weren't even prepared for a shot, right? Usually it's something like that. Otherwise, it's probably no big deal. I did learn early on that it's best just to always give someone a color version if it's savable. Like, just save yourself. This always happens. Save yourself from having to do this. Give it to them in color when you deliver the gallery to begin with. If it's an image that it looks good in color and you wanted to give it in color, and if not, then you can tell them this was a style choice. This didn't meet my standards in color because the lighting here wasn't great or whatever reason. And then I think that's understandable. And you can just say like, this is my name, my business, and that image didn't meet my standards as far as the color edit, and so I can't give it to you for that reason. I mean, obviously, probably wouldn't use that exact wording, but I think just again educating them on why you didn't give it to them in color in the first place, and why you're either not going to, or like I said, if you just want to save yourself from getting those requests to begin with, always just put in color. Give them both versions.
Yeah, if it looks good in color, I would say the same thing. I've when I first started out, I did some black and white and would do it here and there, and then I quickly realized that if you can do it in color, you do it in color and then add the black and white in if that's something that you feel strongly about. So but definitely have that in your contract. And as we go through, we've got some more questions to chat on. But as we're going through, if you do have questions for Sarah, feel free to drop them in the comments. I will make sure to grab them this time. I'm not sure why it's not letting me see previous comments, but I will make sure to grab them before they get lost. All right, so communication, we've talked about it a little bit, but communication is key in client relationships. How do you establish clear communication to manage client expectations, especially regarding like timelines for delivering photos and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I mentioned it earlier, but this is something that kind of happens throughout the entire process. People do not remember things. If you say it once, it's not getting remembered. You have got to continue reiterating things like your timeline, your turnaround time, things like that throughout the whole process. So I do have a consult call with pretty much everyone who books me. And on that call, I already talked to them about my style with shooting. I talked to them about my turnaround time. I talked to them about, literally anything and everything so that before they even book, they know. Again, it's all clearly outlined in my contract. And then again at a session, oh, actually, I touch base again the day before my session for sure with another little recap. Here's where we're meeting. Here's what to expect. Here's how I shoot. Like, be prepared. Here's what you need to bring. I am outlining expectations for everything they need to know coming to that session. During the session, if I sense that they are struggling to, uh, you know, be relaxed or be present in the way that I need them to be present to get the images that I need for my storytelling style, then I'll reiterate it again, as far as don't look at me or whatever like that, things like that. After the session, while we're wrapping up, while we're walking back to our cars, I'm reiterating that timeline, telling them, so be on the lookout. I'll have your proofing gallery to you by the end of the week or whenever, because then that's really fresh in their mind. I did for a while also send an email the day after, had it automated saying like, you know, here's when to expect your gallery, whatever. I ended up taking that away just because the turnaround time was, it's not always the same. And so I wanted to be able to be more specific. So I stopped doing that. But that's something you could do. If your turnaround time is very standard and you really don't change that much, it's always a certain number of weeks, set up an automation where it will literally send to them right after their session, the next day, telling them, here's when to expect your photos. I have always taken client questions as a sign that I need to do something better. So when I first started this business, I used to wait until the day of the session to contact clients and tell them, here's what's happening, here's where we're meeting, just like reiterating everything, even though we probably talked about it 2-3 months ago when they booked. And I was getting a lot of messages from clients the day before, hey, just checking in, where are we meeting tomorrow? What do we need to bring? And I was like, okay, I could be annoyed by this and like be annoyed that people aren't just being patient and waiting. Or I could say, I've got a lot of people asking me this. I need to move this message up. I need to send an email with all of this information 48 hours ahead of time before they've had a chance to think about it. I want to beat them when it comes to that question. I want to already have answered the question. And that's how you have a really great client experience. You've already answered every question they could possibly ask. So they don't have questions or they know exactly what to expect when it comes to what you're going to edit, what you're not going to edit, and things like that. So I think that's everything as far as expectations on that stuff and as far as communication goes with my clients.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that you say that because I feel like if my client texts me saying like, "Hey, are we still on for this weekend?" or like, or that's one that I have not gotten that very often, but or where are we meeting? And I'm like, if they are asking that, I am doing something wrong.
Yeah.
An email needs to be sent, 3 days before, or maybe like 1 week before, and then 3 days. But yeah, if you're getting questions like that, kind of reevaluate what you're doing, see where you can add in some emails or text messages or whatnot, because that will uplevel your client experience so much just by letting them know that you're already thinking about them before that session.
Agreed.
So balancing, flexibility and maintaining firm boundaries can be pretty tricky. How do you find the sweet spot between accommodating client needs and also ensuring your own well-being as a photographer? It's such a hard balance.
Yeah. I mean, I will full transparency, I have not mastered this. I am a workaholic. I am Enneagram 3 through and through, the achiever, the workaholic, like if I could work 24 hours a day, I would probably, because I'm just so passionate about what I do and I'm doing so many different things currently. But I have learned the hard way. And it's actually what led me to photography. What happens when you don't take care of yourself and when you work too much. And so I set boundaries a lot through my phone, which is, a lot of times the problem for me. I have no problem stepping away from my desk. I won't edit on the weekends. I won't really do desk work on the weekends because I'm already shooting usually. And if I'm like, I've got to have some balance here. So I personally won't edit on the weekends. I will only edit Monday through Friday, or respond to emails, desk work, that kind of stuff. So it's my phone that gets me in trouble because then I'm like, I'm getting a text from a client, or I'm getting a DM on Instagram from a client, or someone who wants to book, or I've got comments coming in that I need to respond to. So my phone is what is my problem. So my personal choice to balance this and try to help keep this in check is do not disturb. I will put my phone on do not disturb at 6 o'clock. Maybe not every night, but that way I'm not getting those notifications distracting me. It's going to wait till tomorrow. A lot of times on the weekend, I keep my phone on do not disturb the whole time too, because I know myself, and I know if I've got a message over there from a client, I'm going to feel anxious until I respond to it. That's just my personality. Some people are not bothered by that stuff, but that stuff makes me feel anxious. However, if I have that do not disturb on and that client sees that, because they can see that my phone's on do not disturb, they know, oh, she's not working right now. She's on personal time, whatever. Like they're already in their head not expecting a response immediately because they know I have my notification silenced, which gives me the peace of knowing they don't think I'm ignoring them. They know that it's evening. I'm probably cooking dinner or something. So I love that feature. I use the crap out of that on my phone, and it helps me balance things and it helps me set those boundaries. But I also think just being upfront with your clients and telling them how you want them to communicate with you on that consult call, I always end that by saying, if you have a question or something, you can shoot me a text. If it's important, though, always email it to me. That way I know I'm going to see it, because I might be cooking dinner or something when you shoot me that text and I don't want to miss it or forget to respond. So that is just a little reminder. I'm just planting that seed in their head that, hey, I'm not always working. I might be cooking dinner. If you text me at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I'm not working probably. I am doing normal human things. So like, don't expect me to respond necessarily right away. So just planting that seed ahead of time on that consult call too helps kind of set those expectations that, hey, I don't work 24/7. I have a life. So don't expect me to respond in 2 seconds if you're sending a message outside of business hours or even during business hours, because I'm also, not always sitting right at my desk or doing things where I can respond immediately.
Mhm. Yeah, setting expectations up front is definitely crucial for your client and for yourself. What are some proactive measures that photographers can take during that kind of initial client discussion to establish those boundaries?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be careful in those first conversations with people, because you don't want it to come across as like, I don't talk to clients, like, you don't want it to come off like you're very, like, not on top of things or something like that. So I think you have to be really careful. I don't even know that that's something that I would mention in that first conversation with a client. Like, my goal in that call is to get them to book, right? That is the goal of that
Oh,
call. After that, once they booked, then we can outline those expectations of, here's when we talk. And that's typically what I do. After they book, I'm sending them whatever information they need to know about when we need to talk again or whatever. Like I'm telling them, you're going to get a questionnaire this close to the session. In that questionnaire, I'm telling them again, I'm going to touch base with you the day before your session. I'm telling them every single time when they're going to hear from me next. So they're not like wondering, oh, I don't know, when are we going to talk to a photographer again? And like I said, just telling them, whether you want to be talked to via text, DM, or email, because I think that's really important. If you know that you're really bad about checking your DMs, tell them, don't send me a DM, I will miss it. I think you can tell them that on a phone call easily, because that, if anything, is only going to give them a better experience. Because if they send you a DM and you don't respond for 5 days, they think you're ignoring them because they don't know that you just don't go on Instagram, So you have to know what your personal preferences are with communication and just telling them. And even if it's not like a requirement, if you just tell them this is my preference, like I do with people, telling them send me an email if it's important, because I want to make sure that I can have it right there in your file, and everything like that is going to help keep things in check and keep you from missing things and give them a better experience as well.
Yeah. If I have a client text me, I can't promise that one of my kids won't grab my phone and accidentally click off the notification, and then I'll see it the next day. So
Yeah.
I always tell my clients to email me if it's really important for like following up, like day of, that kind of stuff. I'll text them, and because I know I'll be by my phone. But yeah, it's very important to figure out what works for you, because it might be text messages, it might be DM, whatever works for you and in your your client experience. So what, okay, I know we talked about a little bit about how you offer education. What kind of in-person events do you do?
Yeah, so I have a huge heart for education. Like I said, I'm a Enneagram 3, I'm a planner too. So I'm like very type A. I love planning events, like always have. It's just in my blood, I guess. So I have 3 workshops this year. 2 of those are already sold out. I have a few spots left in a couple months for St. Augustine, Florida. So definitely a great experience to come and get some great content, but also we focus a lot on marketing and business strategies. That's kind of my secret sauce. Like I said, I haven't been a photographer for 15 years. I probably don't have as much knowledge as someone who has been shooting for 15 years, but I built a really strong business and a really strong brand and a very distinctive photography style, that has given me the ability to make more money than I ever thought I would ever be able to make, while having the flexibility that I want. So a lot of my workshops are 50-50. We focus on that business, education, marketing types of things, while also shooting some amazing sessions at different locations. So definitely check that out. Only a few spots left for St. Augustine. If you missed out on Colorado or North Carolina this year, I don't know that I'll go back to those ones next year, but I might go back to North Carolina. I love that area. But yeah, definitely check those out. You can just go to my website, chasingcreativemedia.com/workshops. And then, yeah, I do occasionally release online education. I'm currently filming a great course right now that I had launched last year. So I'm kind of revamping this, and it's going to be launched again probably late spring. So super good course if you are earlier on, or I would say entry level to medium level of as far as knowledge on shooting goes. This course is focused specifically on lighting and understanding all types of natural light and shooting in all different lighting situations. So very, very good, both technical and creative lessons. So you're not just learning the skills, you're also learning how to use those to create your style. So super fun. Love that stuff.
That's awesome. And where can we find you on social media so we can follow along, see your work and all that?
Yeah, so I am Chasing Creative Media on Instagram for Families Maternity. I did start a separate account for my weddings and elopements because that is a separate brand with a very different look, feel, and type of client. So that one is Chasing Creative Couples. Just started from scratch there. So you'll notice a difference in the accounts and the type of content. But yeah, that's probably the best place to find me. I'm also on TikTok, Chasing Creative Media. But I don't post a ton on TikTok, mostly just repurposing my Instagram content.
Yeah, and I'll drop those in the comments so you all can have an easy way to click on it and go check Sarah out. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's so helpful to talk about how to deal with difficult clients. I know it's something that no one wants to deal with, but unfortunately is just kind of part of the job.
Yes.
All right, we will talk later. Thank you.
Bye.